My name is Chloe, and I'm 28 years old. I've always hated weddings. Not because I dislike love, I once believed in it with every fiber of my being, but because weddings reveal more about people than they realize, especially when you're not the bride. It was a warm May afternoon when we arrived at the venue. Everything was white and gold, shimmering in the soft California sun. Her brother, Isaac, had spared no expense. My husband, David, adjusted his cufflinks with practiced ease while I carried our daughter Lucy on my hip, 7 months, cheeks rosy and completely oblivious to the tension thrumming just beneath the surface. I hadn't wanted to come. Lucy was teething, I was exhausted, and David had been cold to me for weeks. But he insisted in that firm, uncompromising voice, "Let's not start any drama. It's my brother's wedding. Be presentable." So I tied my hair up, put on the navy blue dress he'd picked out, and practiced smiling in the mirror until it looked natural. We sat near the front, right behind Isaac and his new wife. David beamed with pride. He'd always adored his brother, perhaps more than he'd ever loved me. I settled Lucy on my lap and reached for David's hand. My fingers brushed his. He flinched as if I'd burned him. Then he leaned close to my ear, his voice low but sharp. "Don't embarrass me. You're just a baby carrier today. Be pretty. Be quiet." And just like that, I was hollow, as if someone had stripped me of all that was human and left only skin. I laughed lightly, hoping no one would notice, hoping no one would hear. I glanced at the other wives, polished, composed, wondering if they, too, had been reduced to vessels for children and convenience. I didn't cry. Not then. When the speeches began, I sat in silence. His mother spoke first, tearfully recounting stories of her brothers growing up. His father followed with the kind of dry humor that draws polite laughter. Then it was David's turn. He spoke of loyalty, family, tradition, his voice steady. Unexpectedly, the microphone was passed to me. "Would you like to say a few words?" Isaac smiled, oblivious to the storm raging beneath my skin. David turned to me sharply. "You don't have to," he said, more of an order than a comfort. But I stood up and smiled. I held the microphone as if it were strange, cold, awkward in my hand, and heavier than it felt. My heart was pounding so loudly in my ears that I almost didn't hear the silence that fell over the reception hall. All eyes were on me, and David's were burning. I began, my voice softer than I wanted it to be. I cleared my throat, gathered myself, and tried again. "Thanks for letting me speak. I wasn't planning it, but weddings are moments, aren't they? Moments we remember." A few polite nods. "I remember my wedding," I said, glancing briefly at David, whose face had frozen in a tight smile. "I was 26. Nervous, hopeful. I thought I was marrying a man who saw me." Someone shifted uncomfortably at one of the tables. I smiled wider, like this was a joke and I was just getting started. I remember thinking, this is the beginning of a life together. You imagine things, don't you? Sunday mornings with coffee, baby names whispered in the dark, someone holding your hand when you're tired and your shirt stained with formula. A soft murmur went around the room. David inclined his head, a warning. "But sometimes," I continued, "you wake up years later and realize you're just part of the furniture. You're no longer a partner. You're an accessory or a vessel." I heard a fork clink on a plate. The silence deepened. Only Lucy babbled in the background, oblivious, innocent. My hand shook as I gripped the microphone tighter. I looked directly at David now. "And sometimes, the person you married, the one who once told you that you made them better, will flinch when you try to touch them. Not because they're angry, but because they've forgotten that you're human." My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't stop. "Isaac, Isabel," I turned to the bride and groom. "I hope you never forget to see each other, even when life gets loud and messy and hard. Because when you stop seeing each other, it's not a marriage anymore. It's a performance." With that, I handed the microphone back and walked off the stage. My palms were sweaty. I didn't look at anyone, just grabbed Lucy, who was now with David's cousin, and hugged her tightly to my chest. David didn't follow me. Not at first. When he did, he walked behind the building near the parking lot, where the smell of champagne and sweat gave way to silence and fresh air. "What the hell was that?" he hissed, his eyes wide with controlled rage. "Are you crazy?" I told the truth, I said quietly. He stepped closer, imposing. You just embarrassed me in front of my entire family. I glared at him. Number one, I reminded them that I exist. His nostrils flared. Go home now. We'll talk later. He didn't offer to help with Lucy. He didn't even look at her. He turned and walked back to the celebration as if he hadn't left behind a woman fading in his shadow. I drove home alone, Lucy asleep in the back seat, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry without guilt. The morning after the wedding, David acted as if nothing had happened. He poured himself coffee, kissed Lucy on the forehead, and scrolled through his phone as if it were just another Sunday. I stood by the sink, watching him as if he were a stranger who had wandered into my kitchen. My body still ached from carrying Lucy, my chest tight from lack of sleep. But he didn't look at me. Not really. He never did anymore. I'm going to the gym, he said coolly, not waiting for an answer. Don't forget, my parents are coming at 3. Try not to bring up last night. I blinked. Was that all? He hesitated. What else is there? I didn't answer. There was no point. David didn't deal in excuses. Not to me. We hadn't always been like this. When we first met, he was magnetic, impeccable suits, quick wit, the kind of confidence that fills a room. He noticed things back then. The way I chewed on my straw when I was anxious, the books I loved but never finished, the way I laughed with my whole body. But things changed after we got married. Subtly at first. He started correcting the way I spoke at dinner parties. He stopped holding my hand in public. Then when I got pregnant, he seemed irritated. Not angry, not cruel, just cold, as if I'd become less useful now that I was heavier, slower, tired all the time. When Lucy arrived, he barely held her. He said he didn't want to do anything wrong, but months passed. He never tried again. I started doing everything. The feedings, the laundry, the nighttime cries, the doctor's visits. When I asked him once if he could change a diaper, he laughed. You're better at that stuff. Natural instinct. It wasn't instinct. It was exhaustion. It was survival. When his parents came over that afternoon, I wore the same smile I'd been wearing for months. His mother commented on how quiet I'd been at the wedding. You didn't say much, she said lightly, sipping her wine. Very classy. That little speech of yours really got people talking. David's jaw twitched. I nodded politely. Sometimes honesty makes people uncomfortable. She blinked. Oh, it was honesty. There was no malice in her voice, just the kind of passive disapproval that cut deeper than any shout. I wondered if she'd ever spoken out against her husband. Probably not. The women in her family were taught to smile through the bruises, even if they were only internal. After they left, David didn't speak to me. 4 hours. He watched TV while I bathed Lucy, sang her to sleep, cleaned the kitchen, and folded laundry. It was like I didn't exist. At midnight, I found him standing on the back porch, staring into space. I meant what I said yesterday, I said quietly. He didn't turn around. You made me look like an idiot. You made me feel like a ghost. He finally turned around. You think you're a martyr now, is that it? I shook my head. Number one, but I'm tired of being invisible. He laughed bitterly. You're not going anywhere. You need me. You have no job, no savings, no plan. You're stuck. He said it calmly, as if it were a fact of life, like gravity. I closed the door behind me and went back to bed. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a life without him. The next morning, I started writing lists. No dramatic lists, no how to escape lists or how to blow it up lists. None of that. Just practical stuff. What I would need to do to survive, bank account, childcare, rent. It felt surreal, like I was planning someone else's move. But each item brought a sliver of clarity. I had been a graphic designer before Lucy was born. Freelance. Small clients. Nothing glamorous but steady. I hadn't touched design software in over a year. David said it was unnecessary for me to work. He made enough money. And besides, what kind of mother leaves her baby with strangers just to design logos for vegan bakeries? Still, I downloaded the software again, quietly at night. The first time I opened my laptop, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I felt like I had a piece of myself back. A real peace. Not the version of me who folded towels perfectly or remembered which pacifiers Lucy liked. David didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't ask. He started coming home later, smelling of whiskey and department store cologne. He said it was networking. I didn't ask questions. I was too familiar with the rhythm of lies. One Thursday, Lucy came down with a fever. I called David at work. His assistant answered. "She's not feeling well," I said. "I need to take her to the ER." There was a pause. Then David's voice, cold and irritated, filtered through. "You can handle this. Why do you call me for everything?" "I don't care," I said, astonished. "This is the first time. I'm in a meeting." Click. I bundled Lucy into the car and sat in the clinic alone for 3 hours. When the nurse asked if her father would be coming, I said, "No, he's busy." That night, while Lucy finally fell asleep, I opened a separate bank account. I had $150 from a client who had canceled and forgotten to turn off the automatic payment. It seemed like a fortune. The next week, I applied for 2 freelance jobs, small projects. The pay was low, but I didn't care. It was proof. Proof that I could still do something, that I could still be something. One of the clients, a woman named Emma from Colorado, texted me after I delivered her logo. "This is beautiful. You really understood what I wanted." "Thank you." I stared at her words for a long time. They were simple, but no one had thanked me in months, maybe years. David barely spoke now, and when he did, it was brief, transactional. "Lucy needs more wipes. We're low on formula. Clean out the fridge." One night, as I was folding laundry, he came in holding a shirt I hadn't ironed. "You're getting sloppy," he said. I looked at him. Really looked. He hadn't aged well. There were lines around his mouth that only deepened when he was condescending. I said nothing, just walked back to the dryer. He stood there for a moment, perhaps expecting an apology, but I didn't offer one, because I wasn't his furniture anymore. 2 weeks after Lucy's fever, I got a job that paid more than all the others combined. A complete website redesign for a nonprofit in Vermont. It wasn't glamorous, but it came with real deadlines and real money. Most important, it came with respect. I worked on it at night, after Lucy was asleep. I'd drink weak coffee and work until my eyes burned. It wasn't easy, but it gave me something David couldn't touch: drive. I started hiding receipts, saving every dollar, selling old clothes online. Quiet stuff, nothing loud. I didn't want him to notice the change. Not yet. Then something I hadn't expected happened. An old friend from college messaged me on Facebook. "Hey, I saw your name on a client's website. Are you still freelancing, Chloe?" We hadn't spoken in 6 years. "Yeah," I typed before I could think too hard. "Late nights mostly. Baby at home. Want to meet up? I'm in town next week." My stomach clenched. David wouldn't like that. He didn't like any woman who reminded me that I had a life before him. Still, I said yes. We met at a coffee shop near the library. Neutral ground. I put on makeup for the first time in months. Not for vanity, for armor. Zoe looked almost exactly the same. Wavy blonde hair, sharp smile, loud laugh. "You look great," she said, hugging me. "Tired but fine," I smiled. That's motherhood. We talked about college, mutual friends, careers. I told her the sanitized version of my life. She noticed. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "I don't mean to pry. You just seem like someone who's holding their breath." I hesitated, unsure of how much I could say. "I'm just trying to get back to being myself." Her eyes softened. "If you need help, real help, I'm here. My company has a daycare program. We sometimes hire remote designers. I can put you in the mail." I blinked. "Would you do that?" She nodded. "You were the best in our class. I always thought you gave up too soon." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering the version of me who dreamed of creative agencies and city lights, not diapers and piercing silence. 2 days later, I sent in my resume. I didn't tell David. He noticed the following week, when he saw a client invoice in the mail. "What is this?" he asked, holding it out like a threat. "A payment for a project you're working on right now." I've never stopped working. He stared at me, his jaw clenched. "You should have talked to me." "I did," I said calmly. "You're the one who didn't listen." He left the room without saying a word. Without shouting. Not yet. That scared me even more. Later, I checked the locks. All of them. Then I responded to Zoe's email. I'm interested. Please keep me in mind. She responded within minutes. I already did. Interview next week. The interview was over Zoom. I wore a white blouse I hadn't worn since before Lucy was born and sat in the only corner of the house where David's presence didn't seem to loom. The woman who interviewed me, Evelyn, was warm, focused, and respectful. She didn't ask about my career hiatus. She asked about my instincts, my process, how I balanced color theory with brand voice. For 30 minutes, I wasn't a wife, I wasn't a mother, I was just me. When we were done, she smiled. We'll be in touch soon, but I can tell you right now that Zoe's recommendation carried a lot of weight. The moment I got off the phone, I exhaled so deeply that I surprised myself. Lucy stirred on the baby monitor, and just like that, the spell was broken. I closed the laptop, picked her up, and paced the house with her against my chest, humming. I didn't have the job yet, but I had something better than certainty, hope. That night, David came home later than usual. His tie was loose, his eyes glassy. Drinking? I asked, too tired to police myself. He grunted, work stuff. I didn't press. He didn't offer any more details. He looked at me, then around the room, which was cleaner than usual. Candle lit, baby sleeping. His eyes narrowed. Why are you so happy? I'm not, I lied. Just tired. He nodded slowly, as if cataloging this answer. Well, I should be. Then he went upstairs without another word. That week, I got the call. I was hired. Part-time, remote, flexible hours, enough starting salary to build something. Don't rush into making a decision, Evelyn said. I don't need time, I said. I'm ready. And I was. I cried after we hung up. Not from fear, not from guilt, but from relief. I called Zoe to thank her. She said, now you just need an exit plan. You don't have to do it all at once, but you can't get stuck. She was right. It wasn't just about work, it was about safety. David didn't hit me, never had. But his control was a different kind of violence, silent, systematic, wrapped in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The next day, I applied for childcare assistance. I contacted a local women's shelter, not to stay there but to ask about resources, just in case. I started looking at one-bedroom apartments to rent and memorizing prices. I cleared my search history every night, hid documents in a folder labeled Lucy's Growth Charts. I kept my voice light around David, kept the fridge stocked, the laundry done, never gave him a reason to stare at me for too long. And yet, one night as I walked past his office, I felt him watching me. I turned slowly. He was sitting in his leather chair, hands clasped, eyes unreadable. You've been busy, he said. I froze. Work, baby, you're always doing something. For someone who used to be tired all the time, you have a lot of energy now. I swallowed hard. I think I'm getting better at balance. He nodded once. Balance. He didn't say anything else, didn't smile, just watched me walk away. My hands were shaking by the time I reached my bedroom. The next morning, David watched me from his office. I woke up early, Lucy still asleep, her small chest rising and falling in a rhythm that soothed me. I poured coffee, checked my email, and found my onboarding documents for Evelyn waiting in my inbox. Welcome to the team, it said. I stared at those words for a long time. They didn't just mean employment. They meant options. Options meant freedom. That day, I did something bold. I looked at an apartment, a small, dated one-bedroom on the outskirts of town. Creaky floors, outdated cabinets, but clean, safe, and within my budget. I told the manager I was just looking, but I took pictures, asked about deposits, memorized the street. When I got home, David was in the kitchen. He looked up the moment I walked in. Are you out? It wasn't a question. Yes, I said. Grocery. He looked past me at the 2 small bags in my hand. It didn't seem like much. It wasn't just diapers and milk. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. That night, as I bathed Lucy, I found myself humming. I hadn't done that in months. I dried her off, swaddled her, and put her in her crib. And for a brief moment, I thought I could get through this unscathed, quietly. Just me and her. No explosions, no scenes. But then the phone rang. David answered. He spoke little, only short, clipped sentences. Then he handed me the phone. "It's your mom." I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Her voice was calm, but something was wrong. "Honey, David said you've been having a hard time. He told me you're overwhelmed." My breath hitched. "What?" "He's worried," she continued. "He said you've been paranoid, maybe even depressed, that you're pulling away from him and the baby. He said you're working too much." The room spun. "I'm fine," I said. "Don't listen to him." "I'm just checking," she said carefully. "Maybe talk to someone, just in case." After I hung up, I walked into the living room and stood in front of him. "You called my mom." He didn't move. She asked how you were. I told her I was worried, which I am, by the way. I looked at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you're spiraling, and if you can't see it, someone has to." It was subtle, precise, a blade in a velvet sheath. He wanted to discredit me if I tried to leave. He was building a case, slowly, quietly, like everything he did. That night, I printed out all the documents. Pay stubs, emails, receipts from daycare inquiries. I hid them in Lucy's diaper bag, under the formula. I packed an emergency overnight bag, diapers, wipes, baby food, a change of clothes, and left it in the trunk. I didn't tell anyone because now I knew David wouldn't let me leave. He needed to maintain control, and I was done being controlled. The next week passed in a cautious blur. I worked quietly during the day, rocking Lucy with one hand while I revised web layouts with the other. At night, I double-checked everything: passwords, bank statements, hiding places. I memorized addresses, numbers, license plates, directions to the shelter. I told no one about my plan, not even Zoe. And yet, I knew something was coming. David's mood changed. He stopped asking questions, stopped pretending. He would stand in doorways, watching me without speaking. He would close his laptop the moment I entered a room. He would mention our wedding album, our future, the way people do when they're trying to remind you of who you used to be, who you were meant to be. Then one night he came home with flowers. Peonies, my favorite. He hadn't bought me flowers in over 2 years. "I thought maybe we could reconnect," he said, placing them in a vase like a peace offering. "Become a team again." I smiled carefully. How thoughtful. He poured us wine, sat down next to me on the couch, his arm draped across the back, not touching me, just hovering. "You've been different lately," he said. "Busier, more reserved." "I've had a lot on my mind." He nodded slowly. "Still, you could lean on me more. If something's wrong, you can tell me." I looked at him. Really looked. This wasn't kindness. It was surveillance disguised as concern. "I'm fine," I said quietly. He waited a moment too long before answering. "Good, because I think it's important that we're on the same page." Later that night, I checked my phone and noticed an unfamiliar app installed. Something called Secure Track. I hadn't downloaded it. My blood ran cold. I checked the permissions: GPS, microphone, messages. It had access to everything. I deleted it instantly. Then I checked Lucy's diaper bag. My emergency folder was gone. I didn't cry. I packed a new folder with only the essentials and hid it somewhere he'd never look. In the back of the trash can under the bathroom sink, triple wrapped in plastic and paper towel rolls. The next morning, I took Lucy to daycare for a check-in. The building was bright, with pictures on the walls, and a kind lady named Camila welcomed us like family. I watched through the window as Lucy crawled toward a pile of blocks, smiling at the other babies. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt allowed. Afterward, I stopped at a gas station and paid cash for a burner phone. That night, I made a call, one I'd been dreading and praying I'd never have to make. The shelter's intake coordinator answered. "I have a baby," I said, my voice shaking, "and I think I need to leave soon. Maybe tonight." She didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. "We'll have a room ready," she said. "Come when it's safe." Back home, David was sitting at the kitchen table, his phone face down, his eyes fixed on mine. He smiled broadly, forcefully. "Going out again today?" "Yeah," I said. "Just running a few errands." "You've been doing a lot of those." I walked past him. I didn't flinch when he stood up behind me. I didn't show fear, but inside I knew it was almost time. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside him, still, listening to his steady, calm breathing, as if he hadn't already turned our life into a chessboard, as if he hadn't already made the first move. At 3:14 a.m., I got out of bed and padded quietly into the nursery. Lucy stirred, then fell back asleep, a small fist clenched beneath her cheek. I kissed her forehead. By 4 a.m., the world outside was dark and silent. I wrapped her in a blanket, hugged her tight, and crept out the back door. The air was cold and sharp, and I felt it seep through my sweatshirt as I unlocked the car, praying the noise wouldn't carry. The emergency kit was already in the trunk. The burner phone was on, with directions to the shelter preloaded. I strapped Lucy into her car seat, got in the car, and gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't look back at the house, not until I saw the porch light come on. He was there in the doorway, still barefoot, watching. For a moment he didn't move. Then slowly he took a step forward. My foot hit the gas. I didn't wait to see if he would run after us. I didn't wait to see what he would say. I drove down the quiet streets, past sleeping houses. Every red light felt like a trap. Every shadow made me shiver. At 4:43, I arrived at the shelter. Camila, not the same Camila from daycare, but another woman with the same gentle calm, met me at the door. She didn't ask any questions, just opened her arms and led me inside. They gave Lucy a portable crib and I a room with a lock on the inside. And for the first time in years, I closed my eyes without fear. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know what the custody hearings would be like or what stories David would tell. But I knew this. We were gone. We were safe. And I wouldn't go back. 2 weeks later, I was in a borrowed dress, holding a microphone again. Isaac had called. He said, "Isabel and I wanted you to speak. What you said at our wedding, people are still talking about it." I almost laughed, but I accepted. The reception was smaller this time, just a post-wedding dinner for family and friends who couldn't travel. David was there. Of course he was. He was in the back, arms crossed, pretending I didn't exist. He had already started spreading his side of the story, that I had had a breakdown, that I had abandoned him. He told his mother I was in a clinic. He told mine that I had taken Lucy without permission. But none of that mattered now, because I had documents, I had witnesses, I had a lawyer, a kind and fierce woman who had David figured out in minutes. The family court case had just begun and would take months, maybe longer. But today was mine. I took a deep breath and began. When I spoke at their wedding, I said that marriage is about seeing yourself. And I meant it. But what I didn't say then, what I didn't have the strength to say, is that sometimes you have to see yourself first, because no one else is going to do it for you. A soft stillness swept the room. I spent years thinking that I was less than, that I should just curl up, stay silent, survive. I thought that if I did everything right, the love would come back. That the cruelty was a phase, that the coldness was stress, but it wasn't. I looked up. David hadn't moved, but his jaw was tight. I walked away, I said clearly, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not because I didn't love, but because I finally loved myself more than the comfort of someone else. No one applauded. No one needed to. The silence carried the weight of truth. I handed back the microphone, walked off the stage, and as I passed David, I looked him in the eye for the first time in months. He said nothing because there was nothing else to say. Back at the shelter that night, I hugged Lucy to my chest and whispered the same 3 words over and over into her soft hair. "We're free." Chloe knew when it was time to leave. Little by little, she regained her self-esteem and felt useful, contrary to what her husband told her. Taking care of her daughter and their lives. What did you think of Chloe's story? Would you have done the same as her? Tell us in the comments. If you liked this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.